Okay, so we're going to start off with preparing our watercolor paper. Okay, so you should have a nice thick quality watercolor paper of some sort. Hopefully you've either picked it up from us or you went and purchased some. And then we're going to tape a border all the way around the edge. You could use blue painter's tape, you could use this tape, whatever you have, but it needs to only be about this thick or less, and you will want to get some of the sticky off before you put it on your paper so that when you peel it off your paper, it doesn't tear your paper. So get a length that is about as long as your paper is, tear it off, and then stick it to your clothes. Like your pant leg would work better. I'm doing my arm so I can get it under the camera, but stick it to your clothes a couple times and get it a little less sticky than how it is when it comes off the roll. And then just line it up perfectly along your edge so you get a nice even border and stick it down. And we're going to do this all the way around the page. I'm taking off some of the sticky on my pant leg right now. And now I will line it up perfectly along the edge of this paper. And this does a couple of things. One, we are going to wet our paper entirely and move paint around on here. So this gives you something to hold onto and keeps your paper flat. I'm removing sticky again. Lining it up perfectly along the edge. And I have it over a little. You could cut this. I just fold a little bit of a tab and then fold it over. It's fine. That helps. Will make it easier for me to peel off later. And then we'll do our last side. I've unstickied it on my pant leg, and now we can line it up to the edge of our paper. Over, and now our paper is ready to begin. Okay, so we are going to create our first layer of our galaxy sky using a wet on wet technique. So the first thing that you're going to do is load your brush with clean water, and I have two water containers here, and one I will keep for clean to add to my painting, and one I will use for washing my brush. So we'll have a clean water and a dirty water. So take clean water, load up your brush, and generously paint your entire page with water. So we want the page, wet where you can see a sheen on it, but not like, sopping where it's soaking through to the other side kind of thing, okay? So now we're going to take our paint. This is my paint palette I have here, and we're going to choose 3 colors is a good place to start, okay? And choose your lightest one you're going to use first. So I'm going to take clean water and activate my paint. So I put quite a bit of water into the color I'm choosing to use first. And then I'm going to just drop this into the water on my paper, okay? Now, when you're doing this, you barely need to touch your paper with your brush. Do not paint. Just add your paint, move it around by moving your paper and having it sort of float through the water. You can use your brush a little. If you touch very lightly, you'll help move your paint around, okay? So add in color wherever you want. I want you to see that my brush is barely touching, okay? And then I'm just letting it float on the water, okay? Now I'm gonna, guess I'm gonna add in a little more color where I might want it. I'm trying to kind of think about my end result, okay? Now I'm gonna rinse my brush off in my dirty water, real good. So I have a nice clean brush. And then I'm going to get a bunch of clean and I'm going to choose a second color. And this one I'm going to go with purple, I think. And now I'm going to do the same. I'm going to drop in color. And I'm going to start letting it sort of flow together. Now, if you are painting too hard on your paper, you're going to start getting little paper fibers coming up, and you won't like that. It'll start kind of messing with your quality of your painting, so don't do that. All right, so I have the purple now. I'm going to rinse my brush and choose another color. And I think I'm going to go with, okay, I got all the paint out. Now I'm going to use clean water to activate my, I think this one's blue. I'm going to use blue. I'm going to add in the blue. And again, I'm barely touching my paper. I'm just laying down the paint. Into this water. Okay, and now I'm gonna be moving it around, rinsing my brush a little here. Okay, so I'm wanting to sort of move my paper around to get the paint to move, but you can see it's puddling right here and it's starting to make sort of a brown mottled color. We don't really want that, so I can use a paper towel and I can bring up a bit of the paint or the water, right? And then come in and add a little more color to it, because if we get too mixed, then we end up with murky colors, okay? And I can come in and I can add water to places to get the paint to blend up a little more where I want it to. And again, I'm just barely touching with my brush. Another thing to think about is when you're moving it around with the water, to make sure you're using the clean water so that it doesn't also murk up your colors. My paper, you can see it's kind of going this way, so I'm going to try to push it out this way to get it to start to blend out a little better. And once you have it kind of where you want it color-wise, I want this pale spot to get a little darker, so I'm going to play with that a little. I'm just kind of lightly tapping in the color and letting it flow in the water that's on my page. Cleaning my brush again. And sort of have a spot here I'd like to blend up a little more, so I'm going to lightly add in some color and then let it flow and mix. And then I'm going to rinse out my brush again. I want to add in a little bit more purple kind of through here. Tap it in and then let it kind of flow and mix. Okay. Once I have it the way that I want, and this is about how I want mine to be for my first layer, we're going to stop and let this dry. See a little spot here. I want to add some water and get it to mix a little. There we go. Okay. Once you have it, now we're going to stop and we're going to let this dry, and then when it is dry, we will come back and we will do a sort of second layer and build up our color and make it more rich and vibrant. But for now, we need to stop and let this dry. Okay, we are going to start on our second layer of adding in color. I have my brush here and my dirty water for cleaning my brush and my clean water for activating paint. I've got my paper towel here if I need it, and we have our paint, and we can bring in the lid of our paint for mixing colors if we would like to do that. So we are going to build up our color and add in paint right now. So what we want to do is choose a color and activate our paint. I'm going to activate my blue and start adding in some blue. And I'm going to start layering it in here. And if you notice, we talked about this in the last video, I'm laying this in with the very tip of my brush. I am not painting, okay? You're just laying in the color. And then I'm going to add water, and we're just going to start moving this paint around with the very, very tip of our brush, very, very, very lightly. No pressure on the paper. I'm going to rinse that out. And I'm going to activate up my purple. I'm going to add a little bit of that in. The very, very tip of my brush, no real pressure, no real painting. You will tear up your paper and just moving paint around on the top surface. Now you can see I have a bit of puddle right here, and I don't really want that. So I'm going to lift just a little bit of that liquid out with my paper towel. And I'm going to keep adding in my color. And this is how we're going to get more vibrant, darker color. Again, avoid your temptation to paint. Put pressure on your paper. Do not do that. That is not how you want to lay down your color. I'm washing out my brush, and now I'm just using clear, clean water. I'm going to add in a little more. And I'm getting a little bit of a run right there. I'm going to absorb it up and then use my brush to move it where I want it to go. I'm going to add blue to this water and move it around through the section of blue that I've got going. A little more water to my blue here. Okay, I'm rinsing that completely out of my brush. I'm going to use a little clean water to activate it in my purple, and I'm going to add in a little purple here. A little purple over here. And now I'm going to rinse my brush again and get it nice and clean. And using some clean water only, I'm going to come in and start moving this paint. Keep in your head moving the paint rather than painting it on, okay? And then just move it around your page. Nice and light. If you push too hard, you're going to tear up the paper. You're going to muddy up your colors. Our colors are staying, they're blending and mixing, but staying sort of clear as well, right? Separated. And as it like muddies a little, I'm going to activate up my yellow a little more, and I'm going to add in more color. Once I have enough color on, then I'll clear out my brush real good, and I will use just clean water to move it around a little. We'll just make sure everything's sort of blended around the way that we want it to be. And I got some green color in there that I didn't want. I picked it up with my paper towel, and then I dropped in the blue again and just let it move around in there. Mix. Again, rinse my brush so I have no paint. Get a little bit of clean water, and I can come in and smooth out areas I want to. Pick up if I have too much water, pick it up, add color to it. I'm completely cleaning all the paint out of my brush, having just clean water so I can soften some edges that I see. And I'm using like slightly round little motions with the very tip of the bristles to sort of soften those edges. Very, very light, barely touching the paper. It's really kind of key. Rinse it clean, use some clean water, and kind of blend out these hard edges here. And I think that I am now ready to let this dry again. So there's our second layer. We've gotten darker, brighter colors, and now we're going to let it dry thoroughly, and we will then come in and start adding in our rest of our sky. Okay, it is now time to do our third and final layer, and this is where we're going to add in our black. Okay, so I have my two waters here. I'm bringing my paint. Now, this is, we're going to use our clean water here and activate our black. Okay, so now we're going to add in the black in strategic areas where we want it. Again, we are not painting, we are just sort of dropping it in with the very tip of our brush. And we'll work in one little spot, okay? So we rinse that out, and then we can activate up blue or whatever color you're working with to add to the black around the edges. Soften it up a little, and we'll use water and we'll start moving it out. And as you can see, the more you water it down, the more it kind of goes away and gets lighter and shows the color from underneath. So with the very tip of our brush, very lightly in sort of circular motions with just water, we start moving out the black edges and blending away its line. Okay, and then we can come in and we can add in more black, add more water to it if you need to activate. Start adding in. And using just water to move it around. And very light motions. Do not scrub your paper or your paper will start to come apart. I'm rinsing it clean using fresh water, and I'm activating my purple now, and I'm adding in purple along the edge here. And we'll just start kind of mixing that together. Rinse, use just water and move it around. We want to try and avoid harsh lines like this right here. So it would be good to soften it up, use the water, mix the edges. So when you see that, you're not losing your color, but you're adding a darkness to it to create that sky feel or that galaxy feel. Now I'm cleaning my brush again. I've laid down some black, and then I'm just using water before it dries to move it around my page. And soften all my edges. And again, I will add in color to it. Along the edging and mix it slightly with the tip of the brush. Just moving that around. And I continue to use my 3 colors, sort of add to it. Rinse my brush. Okay, and as I start to feel like I maybe have a little too much water, I can use my paper towel and dab just a little. Pull up some of that water. Some dripped on my table. I'm going to come in and I'm going to add in some black down in here. Rinse out my brush, get it clean. And use some blue to add into the edging here. And just keep on blending with the very tip of my brush, very lightly. It's slight little circular motions. Softening the edge. I'm cleaning it out completely, getting the paint out. And now I'm just adding a little clean water, and I'm going to come in and start blending and softening through here. And if I feel like it's starting to get like muddy or murky, I can come in and add in a little more color. And keep blending and softening. And if I feel like I have more water than I want, pick it up a little bit. Okay, I'm rinsing out completely. And I'm going to pick up some black, and I'm going to add in some more black. I want to make sure I have enough water in my black. Now I rinse it completely out. Put some clean water in my blue and start coming through again and sort of mixing with the very tip, very lightly, letting it blend together naturally. Get your edges quickly before they dry and make a harsh line. You do not want that. I'm rinsing completely out. I'm going to lift a little bit of water through here. And then I'm going to add in some purple, start blending. Okay, and now I want to use just water and soften up my edges. Maybe add in, pick this up a little, and then drop in some more yellow into that water. And use my very light circular motions to blend out any edges. Okay, and as you go, just kind of look it over, see if there's anything you want to mess with. You can use if you are using tissue or something like that, or paper towels at home are a little more tissue-like. This one's not great, but you can very lightly add some texture to your sky if you would like. As long as you are working very gently with your brush, then you can keep working with your paper. If you are pushing too hard, you're going to start damaging your paper, and then you will have to sort of stop working with and trying to move around the paint. But if you're just very lightly with the tip of your brush, you can keep softening, moving, whatever. Okay, I think that I am to a point that I am happy with mine. Out my paper here. And again, we will be stopping here and we will be allowing this to dry, and then we will start putting in our stars. Okay, so for our last part of this project, we're going to add in stars, and we do that with this white acrylic paint. And we're going to put this here. I'm using the lid of my watercolor. Uh-oh. Brand new. There we go. And I just need a little bit of white. And I'm going to use my paintbrush, and I do get some clean water to add and kind of water this down a little. We want it to be a bit runny. Because we want it to splatter, right? So once I've now loaded my brush up with quite a bit of, runny white paint, then I'm going to take it with another brush. And this, you want to be careful because it's going to make a big mess. And just tap. Wear old clothes because it's splattering back on me, as you can see. And tap in some stars. Okay. Another option that you can use if you have one, we are only sending home paintbrushes, so this is only if you have one. A toothbrush works really well. This happens to be my favorite way. But load the toothbrush up with your wet paint. Your runny. We don't want that, but that's easy to fix. Okay, so for right now, I'm not going to, I can correct that with watercolor, but if you take your fingernail, your finger, and do this, and it makes stars. Okay. Now, that is a good, don't get it too wet and drippy so it's dripping on your paper, obviously. Okay, so you guys can see I got paint everywhere on the desk. So wherever you're doing this, make sure you lay down, paper, a cloth. I have an old sheet that I will use often to drape over things when I'm painting at home. So whatever surface you're working on, make sure that you cover it. Don't have anything around that you don't want to get paint on. And old clothes, because it will fling back on you, okay? So now I've got my stars in, quite a few of them. You can put however many you want. I'm going to rinse out my brush because if you recall, we did a little drip right there, right? And I'm just going to show you real quick, how we can correct that. Bring in my paint again and just put a little bit on there. Rinse my brush. Have a wet but clean, and just blend it away into it. And there goes our little mishap. And I got a spot in the yellow that I feel I want to fix. I'm going to do the same. Didn't get enough water to activate my yellow. There we go. I just put it on there and cover up that little spot. Again, rinse paint all out of my brush. Use a little clean water. And I can blend any hard edges I get. And now you can't even see where I dripped that white, especially when it dries. Okay, so now you have your galaxy sky with some stars. So if you by any chance have a white gel pen, this is what you would use to put in a few stars like this. But most of you probably don't have a white gel pen, right? So I'm going to show you how you can do it with your paintbrush. So I'm just making sure this is to a point. I'm going to use my white paint I've been using. It's a little bit runny and watered down, and I'm going to do barely touch the paper and do flicking motions. And now I have a star put in with paint. And if your paint is a little bit too watered down, add a little more paint. I thought that one was a little light because it was watered down. So I'm just going over it. A little bit thicker paint, okay? And you can go in and you can add in however many a little bit bigger stars you want. With your brush, but remember you want to use just the very tip, barely touching your paper, and flick it. Do not come down on your paper and paint like this. You will not like what you get. It won't look like a star. Very tip, barely touch your paper. So it's a very thin line. Flicking motions. If it starts to get too thick or not go on well, a little more paint, very little paint at a time. And add in the stars that you want. Okay, another detail that you could do, again, with a gel pen, I'll show you first. You can add in just a few little lines, sort of following the colors that you've done for a little bit of an accent, if you want to. Right? Kind of add some interest, and you would do it with your paintbrush in much the same way that we did the stars, where you just barely touch with the tip of your brush, really lightly. And you can also do like a little galaxy. Again, this is detail, so you're using that very, very tip of your brush. Very, very, very lightly. And then you can kind of dot in the little center planet, make him a little stand out a little better. Okay, and then if I wanted to do it with the gel pen, kind of want it right here. And you can add it in that way as well. And if you'll notice when I'm doing it, I'm doing very like oblong circles. Don't make big circles. And the finer your brush is, the easier it'll be for you. Okay, and you can just keep putting in, you know, stars, galaxies, whatever it is that you want until you feel that your sky is done and you're happy with it. And then, you know, you might need to let your stars and whatnot dry before you take off your border. But once that is the case, which I think mine are pretty dry, they dry pretty quickly with that watered down paint. So at this point, you can now carefully peel off your border tape very slowly and carefully, and kind of pull away from your painting. See how I'm pulling away and not in like this. That way, if it does, see, it's kind of tearing the paper off. That's why we took some of the sticky off. So it would maybe not do that. But if it's doing that, then at least you're not tearing it into your paint. So be sure to pull away from your, see here where I folded it over and I tabbed it, and it makes it easy for me to pick it up. And slowly peel away from my paint. There we go. Okay, and now you can see that I have a nice, clean, crisp border all the way around my picture, and then the whole time I was working on it, I could move it around and hold it without getting paint all over my hands. So that's a nice reason for the border. Okay, so at this point, the last thing, I want you guys sign and date your work. I think today's the 13th. There we go. And that is your galaxy sky.